In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to give you the most comprehensive breakdown of how our client Israel bought his first property without having any experience, without seeing the property virtually, or without needing to be in a position where he did any legwork on his end. If you look at this conversation with myself, he's in a position where he had initially inquired in April. He had to sort out some things personally, and then by I think this was May 18th or May 19th, he was in a position where he signed up with us. He had the constraint of obviously not being sure on how to run everything virtually, didn't have the connections or the acquisition strategy tailored to the situation, didn't want his capital to continue to sit. Like if you look at this picture right here, he was talking about how he was in a position where he was new to the whole thing, and everything that he needed was something that we were going to provide, right? In regards to communicating with the lenders, sellers, filling out paperwork, all the above. We had the whole team helping him throughout the entire process. So we stopped about everything. And he closed today. Today is June 30th. So in regards to actually going and getting onboarded is more of like a 745-day thing for him in regards to getting everything done. You obviously can see his review right here. This is him after signing. This is our guy Mark sending the picture in regards to his loan number, everything closing. This is him actually making the post. I couldn't share his post on IG because his account is private, but he didn't need to do any legwork. He didn't need to see the property himself. This man is not in a position where he also had to go and find the property himself. 15 to 20% cash on cash returns were conservatively without needing to see the property. Alongside that, full team is on the ground, so he doesn't even need to go see the property if he doesn't want to. Can receive rent from the housing authority. This is the actual property in of itself, but it's actually analyzed the deal so you could understand where he was coming from, and alongside that, the things that we did for him in terms of an overall overview, and alongside that, the process that we follow. So we have our screening process. This is something that if you want this document, you can message me for it. But alongside that, the main things were making sure that we had his buy box set up, which is something that we talk about in regards to this document right here. Ensuring the negotiations and term made sense, because you can't just think about properties in terms of numbers in, numbers out, because if you do that, you're going to be in a position where you get blindsided, right? Think about your holding costs, your vacancies, miscellaneous, bullshit costs, processing fees, everything can add up. So when you're calculating your cash on cash return, you can't just calculate based off of what the property is going to rent for, and alongside that, how much your down payment and closing costs are. Those are not the only costs that are associated. Alongside that, closing costs are sometimes lower than your holding costs, right? The main thing after finding out those negotiations and obviously doing our walkthroughs and making sure that the property made sense, because his goal is cash flow, is pre-leasing the property, right? When you pre-lease, you want to be in a position where you go and test if there's traffic, right? Facebook Marketplace, be on the low, post the property out there so you can see if not only is there tenant demand, but is there tenant demand of Section 8 vouchers, right? It's a whole different ballgame. Onboard them the property management. Before closing, you get the Section 8 tenant voucher attached to the property, which is what we're doing right now. But in regards to this process entirely, this is something that we've done in terms of direct to seller with a property manager who does flips himself, so we could be in a position where everything is seamless for the person that's buying on the end. You want this list, you can message me. But since his goal was cash flow, his goal was to stay around $25,000 all in, making sure that we got the proper negotiations in regards to the credits, alongside that, any touch-ups that were needed, and ensuring that we went with the 4-bedroom as opposed to a 3-bedroom and the right zip code, because the zip code is what determines the rent rate, alongside that what the Section 8 is going to offer you, because they're not going to give you the full rent rate all of the time. You're going to be in a position where sometimes 80%, 90%, you need to ensure that the cash flow still works in that regard, even at that low ball number. So it's all multiple things that we're all factoring in with regards to helping this individual. But the biggest thing is just going to be in a position where it's ultimately a matter of action, having the right acquisition strategy, and everything is tailored to the individual, just like his is going to be completely different from yours, or yours is going to be completely different from the next person. The numbers, right? A lot of people are in positions where that's all they talk about is the numbers, but it's not just a matter of that. But these are the numbers that actually came through from his estimate, and your rates are going to be determined off of your individual situation. But I just wanted to send you this picture. Show you the guys this picture. So you're in a position where you can see what actually, things could look like, right? The reason why things are going to be different is because of your credit profile. Alongside that, what bank is being used? How much down are you going to put? Because he's not even putting 15%. He's not putting 20% down. The other thing is also factoring in not only your credit profile, but the rates of that current day. When is your rate getting locked? Your rate is getting locked on a Monday. You should never do, but sometimes you may have to. It's going to be a lot higher than if it's going to be on, say a Tuesday or something along those lines, or middle of the week. You never want to do it on Friday. You never want to do it on Monday, just from practical lending standards. Alongside that, being in a position where you guys can see what these payments look like on properties that are, sub $120,000. If you're looking at a property over here in California, sometimes that's people's down payment and closing costs to get into the property, but you're buying a whole property for the price point of a down payment over here in California. I believe that he ended up going with this option right here. His property ended up having a cash close. I believe it was like just under, it's just around $24,000, which is right where he wanted to be at. Not including obviously the credits, all the above. We have to factor in all the holding costs. So when I mentioned the cash close and all in the expense, that's what I mean in regards to this. Because it ended up being lower than these amounts, but I want you to understand that whenever I say like all in cost, it includes everything, right? Here, property's going to rent from $1,500 to $1,650 a month, guaranteed from the federal government. Alongside that, he didn't need the full 20% down. And you can see right here, this is from the HUD user. This is not from me pulling numbers out of my ass. Alongside that, with it being 1660, we run numbers at around 1550 or even maybe a 1600 rent rate, because sometimes the Section 8 is going to lowball you, and you also need to factor in the fact of, say this property would rent for 1550 from the government, but then they're asking the tenant for the other $100. You need to be in a position where you understand that there's a possibility that the tenant may not pay that extra 100, even if it's only $100. Like to you, it may say, okay, it's only $100. For some individuals, they're going to be in a position where they're going to make you haggle for that. And obviously, we put tenants that are going to be high quality, that don't bother you. They're not going to haggle, and they're very grateful for the opportunity to stay in the house. But there's still the possibility where either life could change, they could get a new spouse. That spouse could say, hey, fuck the landlord, don't pay him. Those are all things you need to factor into this acquisition, and all things that people don't even talk about because they're unconventional. And they're kind of like off the books little things that are insider knowledge. But these are things that we always factor in when we're working with people and helping them out in regards to the full one-on-one. All in investment, right? That's what I always talk about, all in investment. Vacancy, touch-up, Section 8 inspections, holding costs, miscellaneous, all this stuff puts it under a $26,000 investment, which is right where you want to be at. And one property is not going to retire you. Like they're just not going to happen, right? Unless you want to go live in fucking Thailand or Bali or whatever the fuck, and live way below your means, which I mean is a possibility as well. But it's like, where are you going to find a property in California that's going to give you these sort of returns with the capital allocated, right? And in regards to an acquisition like Israel, it's just a matter of, one, finding the buy box that is going to make sense, which is a 4-bedroom because you want a higher cash flow. Finding an acquisition strategy that's going to put him in a position where you can stay within his numbers, which is around $25,000. Alongside that, his timelines of around 60 days to go and get the property rented. In regards to that being said, we have our property manager that started to onboard him before he closed, and then we were in a position where as soon as he closed, he could just start the Section 8 touch-ups to go and get the tenant attached to the property, get the repairs done. Alongside that, passing inspection, he has a grace period with his first mortgage payment, which are going to push back to the 15th of every single month. So he can be in a position where he doesn't have the holding cost of the mortgage for as long as possible. And then also ensuring that we get the paperwork started so everything can line up in accordance with the timelines that he has and the responsibilities that he has. So with regards to a property acquisition, it is not just a matter of buying it and hoping that shit just works out, or saying, oh, let me just submit offers, or oh, let me figure it out myself. Because if you don't know how to coordinate all of these things subjectively at the same time, you're going to be in a position where you could get completely blindsided, and then the property may not make sense as much as it initially did in your mind, right? And in regards to him being at 15% down, a lot of people have that misconception that you need to buy 20% down out of state. But in reality, if you know how to do things creatively and how to make the most of the resources you have, you could go in at 50% down if it can still work. Sometimes you even get better terms than if you were at the DSCR 20% down. But the thing is that most people just think, okay, 20% down is the amount that I need, simply due to the fact that they saw videos about DSCR loans online. But in reality, you just need to get into the game, because as you get into the game, you can go and get better terms. Like, for example, now with my current accredited lending history, in regards to obviously being someone that has properties, I could be in a position where I could go and get 85% LTV, which is 15% down on DSCR terms, so they don't report to my credit. This property will report to his credit, but he's going to be in a position where he could, refinance if he wants to later to a DSCR loan, which doesn't report. And alongside that, people have the misconception that a property reporting to your credit is a bad thing, when in reality, if the property is debt servicing and is paying by herself and it's an investment, it actually strengthens your profile, because the property is not something that is, a negative account, right, on your credit profile. So you have to factor all of these things in when you're going and allocating, right? Obviously, the 10%. I mean, it's renting this is at 1660. Say it was at 1650, it'd be more cash flow. But yeah, you have to factor in like water bill. Sometimes it'll be less than this. I put a very conservative mortgage payment, all of the above. I believe his mortgage payment ended up being lower. I think it was like just like $800 or like something along those lines. But you're still in a position where you're at like a 25 not necessarily 25. Say you conservatively you're at 20% cash on cash return, which the average property in California is going to return 8 to 10%. So you have to understand that the goal of these is to stack them, get the tax benefits, get the depreciation, the appreciation, the cash flow, and then eventually, if you're in a position where you don't want to scale and you want to just have properties that are paid off, you could allocate, your active income towards this, and this property pays off. Because then, by the time that you do that, you'll probably be at like, you know, say a 2,200 a month, right? In regards to guaranteed rent from the government, property's paid off at a $100,000 price point. So now that $100,000 investment is still at a 20% cash on cash return, but it's actually net in your pocket. So multiple things that you need to factor in. Where's this at? But you have to also understand that it purely just comes to a matter of your action ability and understanding his situation, like this one, right? He was talking about his timelines, all the above. And I was talking about, like, right here, he was saying he wanted to use business credit, write it off. And then I was telling him about his situation, like, you don't want to write everything off. That's just the importance of having the right people and that actually care about getting your results, that are, going to be in a position where you go and write reviews like this simply due to the fact that they got results that were so, outstanding. With that being said, I believe that Section 8 investing is something that is going to get a lot more traction than it already is right now. And if you have any questions about absolutely anything regarding Section 8 investing, or even traditional, because I have properties that are out of state as well, just go ahead and either message me on Instagram, leave a comment down below. But let's get to it. Right now is a perfect time to buy, simply due to the fact that a lot of people are withholding on their money. You can get in the game and refinance later while the price points continue to skyrocket.